is your no bullshit guide to a happier life. Quick, but not necessarily easy tips to help you to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your business and your life. My name is Helen Calvert. I'm a coach, a business owner and a parent, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I do swear occasionally, as the title suggests, so pop in your headphones if I'm not safe for little ears. Ready to go? Let's do this. Hello and welcome to this episode where we are going to be talking about sex and the autistic brain. It's almost a tradition that I have at least one episode in each season that's about sex, although I didn't do that in season 4 because season 4 was all about getting shit done, and we can have efficient sex, but I don't think it didn't seem like the thing to include in that season. But in all the other seasons, I've had at least one episode that focuses on sex, and this season will be no different. And that is partly because it's one of my favourite subjects, and partly because it's such an important part of our well-being and our life experience. And too often it gets overlooked or pushed to the side because people don't really know how to talk about it. But I do know how to talk about it. I love talking about sex. So here we go. And this one will be much easier for me to talk about than the last episode, which was about healthcare, because that one was a really tricky one for me. So this is a palate cleanser for me anyway. So you'll have noticed we don't have a sponsor for this episode. And that is because what I want to tell you about this time around is the Autism and Sex webinar that I did with Ruth Ramsey in 2024. Ruth Ramsey is a fantastic sex educator, adult sex educator and intimacy coach. And we recorded that webinar and you can buy it online. I think it's £15, something like that, £15, $19. So you can buy that online at Ruth Ramsay, that's ramsay.com/autism. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes for this episode. So what we covered in that webinar was how being autistic can create additional challenges to a pleasurable sex life, how to overcome these challenges for better than ever experiences, my own story about how autism has affected my sex life, positively, mainly positively to be honest, but some challenges as well, why autistic people may be drawn to things like BDSM and other kinks, how to initiate conversations with partners, and where to go for specialist support. So I highly recommend getting yourself a copy of the webinar. If you're autistic, if you're with someone who is, if you think you are, even if you're not, because actually a lot of what we covered will be really helpful for everyone, because it's all about just being in tune with who you are as an individual and not worrying about the supposed rules or social norms of sex. So I'm not going to go over everything that's in the webinar in this episode, but what I thought I would do is go over some of the things that came up when we did the webinar live, because we then did a Q&A session, which is not included in the recording. So I thought I'd go through some of the questions and our answers to those, because some really good stuff came up. So we started with the first question we had was, do you think autistic sex is easier or harder to negotiate and discuss between autistic people or with someone who's autistic and someone who is allistic, which just means you're not autistic. So you could be ADHD or you could be neurotypical, but allistic people are not autistic. So what are the challenges in discussing sex and our sexual needs between people with different neurodivergences? And I think really the conclusion we came to was that it's not really about someone's brain type. I've had amazing sex with someone with ADHD. I've had sort of all right-ish sex with autistic people. I've had all kinds of mixed experiences with neurotypical people. It hasn't really been about the brain type. It's been much more about the ability to listen and be open and communicate. And apart from anything else, I think that's something that comes with age. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I mean, the thought of talking about what I was thinking when it came to sex. And we just, yeah, I had no idea how to do that. And even if I did, a lot of the people I was with who were of a similar age really didn't know how to do that or respond. So it comes with age, I think, and ability to communicate. But certainly the ability to be open and listen, because it's not just about being able to say things, it's about being able to receive what is said. The fear most of us have when we communicate something about sex is that the other person's going to go, oh my God, you weirdo, or oh, that's really off-putting, or I didn't know you were like that, and all these other terrible fears. But even if they don't, we're still worried there's going to be some kind of response that makes us feel a bit ashamed or misunderstood. So actually, the ability to listen and just say, wow, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm going to need to think a bit about that, because that's not something I've ever thought about, or that's not something that really floats my boat, but I'm really interested that that's what you're into, or I'd love to hear more about it. You know, even if you're not able to say, wow, yeah, I'm the same, I love that idea. So how we receive what we're being told is just as important as having the confidence to talk about how we feel. And Ruth made a good point in that sometimes we really can't say what we want to say, but we can find content that says it for us. So a blog post, a podcast, an article, anything that we think, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. We can then say to our partner, please, could you listen to this, read this, consume this, so that you can understand where I'm coming from, and then perhaps we can have a conversation. And I think if someone isn't willing to read or listen to something that's important to you in that sense, then that is a bit of a red flag, because the only way any of us are going to have really good sexual experiences is by understanding each other better and better. Certainly my experience has been that you can find someone attractive, and attractive people are wonderful, and it's nice to have pictures of them on your wall and think, oh my goodness, they're attractive. We all had posters up when we were teenagers, didn't we? Or most of us did. But in reality, the good experiences don't come from being with someone with rock hard abs or amazing tits or whatever it might be. They come from being with people who you can really open up to, and be fully seen with. So then we had another question about how to open up these conversations and express your needs, and just the vulnerability of that. And it kind of made me smile, because I've had these conversations with friends about how do I open up and say to somebody, this is who I am, this is what I like, or I'm autistic, or, I have challenges in this area. Like, how on earth do you start those conversations? And I always smile, because I honestly don't know how not to have those conversations. So I'm probably not the person to ask, because I really don't know how to hide who I really am when I'm in an intimate relationship. If I am having sex with someone, they have to know everything about me. That's the only way I've ever known how to do this. So the reason that my sex life has improved over time is because I've learned more about me, and then I've been able to share it with them. So what I was sharing when I was younger really wasn't particularly helpful information, but I've never known how not to just go, here's everything that's in my head. Do you want me or not? So I might be the wrong person to ask, but that has been a real plus for me with the right people. We've all seen lots of discussions about red flags in relationships, haven't we? But we've also hopefully seen some information about green flags. What are the green flags? What makes you confident that you're in a good relationship? And I asked my boyfriend this. I said, "What were there any green flags with me when we got together?" Because God knows I had plenty of red flags. On paper, I was not a good girlfriend option. And he said, you've always been so open and clear about your needs. It's really nice not to be expected to be a mind reader. So there's real value in that, because trying to read someone's mind is very, very hard. And I think when it comes to neurodivergence or any other challenge that we might have physical disabilities, mental illness challenges, just like so many challenges come up when it comes to sex. And we don't have to say sort of hesitantly and apologetically, oh, I'm autistic, so it might all be a bit difficult and I'm sorry, because that puts the other person in a mindset of, oh my goodness, how can I help this person? And that puts us into a position of being sort of a bit almost like a victim, really. And it's not a nice dynamic. We can be a lot more confident and say, look, do you know what? I want us both to have as much fun as we can. And so let's talk about my brain type and your challenges and my fantasies and whatever's going on in your head, because the aim here is for us to both have as much pleasure as we can. And if that means doing things in a way that isn't like the way they do them on telly, then fantastic. I very much doubt that many people have sex the way it's shown on TV, but that might be another conversation. So the final question, which again really made me smile, was, do you as an autistic person struggle with knowing when somebody fancies you? And I've read this before, people saying sometimes the way I communicate is misconstrued as flirting. I never know when somebody's flirting with me. I'm clueless. How do I pick up on those social cues? And initially I thought to myself, oh, I don't have that problem. I always know when somebody's flirting with me, when somebody likes me. But then actually I found myself laughing to myself, because that's not entirely true. And I think what happens is, if you find those social cues difficult, you go in one of two directions. You either never think that anybody fancies you and are always kind of oblivious to it, and you just don't read those cues and you've got no idea. Or you do what I realise I've always done, which is assume that everybody fancies you. So anyone that's ever come up to me in a bar or had a conversation with me, or men who seek me out even now at networking events or anything like that, where somebody shows an interest in me that might possibly, just possibly, potentially, maybe be that kind of interest, I will always assume that it is. And sure, that could be construed as incredibly arrogant, but that's not where it comes from. It comes from a place of wanting to stay safe, because not knowing that somebody wants you, not knowing someone desires you, can get you into some really tricky situations, and you can find out too late that they do, and you're in a really awkward situation. And I hate awkward situations, so I like to see them coming from a mile off. So that's why I will generally assume that I am being flirted with, or I am being desired. But actually, I have no clue any more than anyone else does. So it is an interesting thing about autism, but maybe it's something that other people struggle with as well. I'd love to hear your experiences. Are you confident that you know when someone fancies you or when they don't? Or is it a complete mystery and you have kind of come up with some kind of strategy to overcome that? And something else actually that did come up was talking about the brilliant way that long distance relationships can help if you are autistic, because it means that so much of sex is discussed in writing. You text, you sext, you come up with stories and fantasies. So the current relationship I'm in and the one before that were both long distance. I date transatlantically. My boyfriend's in the States. So much of it is written down and discussed. And for someone who prefers communicating in writing, that is brilliant. For someone who likes to get prepared, that is brilliant, because by the time we actually do anything in person, we've probably sexted about it so many times that I've got it clear in my head and I know what to expect and I've figured it all out. And one attendee at the webinar did say that they had then moved in with their girlfriend and they had had a long distance relationship, and things were harder now in some ways because they didn't have that opportunity for that kind of written communication. And of course my response to that is still do it, still text each other, even if you're in the same house, even if you sat next to each other. If that works, if writing things down is easier and a better way to communicate, and if having some written prep before you actually do anything, or even before you even say anything, verbally. If that helps, keep doing it. So that really is the message of the webinar, which I hope you will grab yourself a copy of, because it really is brilliant. Even if I do say so myself, we've had amazing feedback from it. And the message of this podcast, which is whatever works for you, do that. And let's try not to worry about what's weird and what isn't, because we actually have no idea what goes on in anyone else's bedroom. We only see things on the TV or porn, both of which are made up nonsense coming from different angles. But we really don't know what anyone else is doing, and it doesn't matter. The aim is to have as much pleasure as we possibly can, because sexual pleasure is fantastic. So let's have lots more of it. So let's be excessively kind to ourselves as we figure out how to navigate our sex lives with whatever brain type we have. And that way we can squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of sex and life as a whole. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out how to work with me or how to get your hands on a copy of my book, you can find all of those links in the info for this episode. My huge thanks to Stephanie Ward of the Spicy Brain Collective for sponsoring the whole of this season of the No Bullshit Guide to a Happier Life. You can also find out more about Steph's collective for neurodivergent business owners via the links in the episode info. See you next time.